It's 10:15 a.m. in Sarajevo. A bomb, meant for the heir to an empire, clatters off the folded roof of his touring car. It explodes under the next car in the motorcade, blowing a hole in the street and wounding 20 people. Amid the smoke and screams, Archduke Franz Ferdinand is furious, but alive. He arrives at City Hall moments later, his composure shattered. As the mayor begins a trembling speech of welcome, the Archduke cuts him off, his voice seething with rage. "Mr. Mayor, I come here on a visit and I am greeted with bombs. It is outrageous. The first assassination attempt has failed. The assassins are scattered, panicked. One of them, a boy named Nedeljko Kabranovic, has swallowed faulty poison and jumped into a shallow river, only to be dragged out and arrested. The plot is in ruins. The Archduke is safe. The day should be over. But in the next 28 minutes, a series of catastrophic decisions, fueled by pride, duty, and a single miscommunication, will steer the Archduke directly back into the crosshairs. How does a failed assassination, a public humiliation, and a furious Archduke lead to the 10 seconds of chaos that will ignite World War I? To understand, you have to rewind the clock not just minutes, but years, and see the storm that had been gathering long before that bomb ever left an assassin's hand. Let's be clear, the fuse for this explosion was laid 6 years earlier, in 1908. That's the year the colossal, creaking Austro-Hungarian Empire formally annexed Bosnia and Herzegovina. To the empire, it was a simple administrative move, locking down a territory they'd been managing for decades. But to the neighboring kingdom of Serbia, and to the ethnic Serbs living inside Bosnia, it was a profound insult. A theft. It was the final, crushing blow to the dream of a greater Serbia, a unified state for all South Slavs. Imagine watching a foreign power swallow your homeland, and you begin to understand the rage simmering in the coffee houses and university halls of Belgrade and Sarajevo. This rage needed a name, a structure. It found one in the shadows. Secret societies began to form, their names like something out of a pulp novel, Narodna Odbrana, National Defense, and later, its more radical, more dangerous offshoot, Ujedinjenj ili SMRT, Unification or Death. The world would come to know them by their Austrian intelligence codename, the Black Hand. This wasn't a club for disgruntled students. The Black Hand was a death cult for the disillusioned elite. Its ranks were filled with Serbian army officers, government officials, and lawyers. Its members swore a chilling oath on a crucifix, a dagger, and a vial of poison, pledging their lives to the cause. The group's constitution was explicit: this organization prefers terrorist action to cultural activities, it will therefore remain secret. Its leader was the chief of Serbian military intelligence himself, Colonel Dragutin Dimitrijevic, a man known by the menacing code name Apis, the Bull. Apis was a master of the double game, a man who saw no conflict between his official duties and his secret war. He had been a key player in the brutal 1903 palace coup that saw Serbia's own king and queen murdered and thrown from a balcony. He was not a man to be trifled with. The Black Hand's methods were terrorism, pure and simple, sabotage, espionage, and political murder. They operated in small, clandestine cells of 3 to 5 members, ensuring that if one was caught, the entire network wouldn't collapse. Their goal was singular: to shatter the Austro-Hungarian grip on the Balkans, by any means necessary. And in early 1914, they found their perfect target. The news spread like wildfire through their network: Archduke Franz Ferdinand, the heir to the Austro-Hungarian throne, was coming to Sarajevo. And he was coming on June 28. The timing was a deliberate, calculated insult. June 28 is Vidovdan, or St. Vitus Day, a sacred day of Serbian martyrdom, the anniversary of the crushing defeat at the Battle of Kosovo in 1389. For the heir of the occupying power to parade through their city on that day, it was a challenge that could not be ignored. Ironically, Franz Ferdinand was perhaps the one man in the Habsburg court who could have saved the empire. He was a political moderate, a pragmatist who saw the writing on the wall. He believed in granting greater autonomy to the Slavic peoples, in creating a third Slavic crown within the empire to balance the power of the Austrians and Hungarians. This very idea, the one that might have pacified the region, made him the Black Hand's single greatest threat. A happy, semi-independent Slavic state under Habsburg rule would kill the dream of a greater Serbia forever. So, the man who might have prevented a war had to be eliminated. The order went out from Apis in Belgrade: a team would be assembled. Weapons would be provided. The Archduke would die in Sarajevo. But who was this Archduke? Far from the stiff, imperial caricature, Franz Ferdinand was a man of deep contradictions. He was known for his short temper and social awkwardness, yet he was a devoted husband and father. His greatest battle wasn't fought on a field, but within the gilded cage of the Habsburg court. He had fallen deeply in love with a woman the court deemed unworthy, Countess Sophie Chotek. She was a lady-in-waiting from a noble but not royal Bohemian family. For a Habsburg heir, this was an unthinkable match. The emperor, his uncle Franz Joseph, forbade it. But Franz Ferdinand, stubborn and deeply in love, refused to marry anyone else. For years, he fought the system, until the emperor finally relented in 1899, but with cruel conditions. Their marriage would be morganatic, meaning Sophie could never be empress, and their children would have no right to the throne. She was publicly humiliated at court, often forced to enter functions last, separated from her husband. The visit to Sarajevo was, for them, a rare opportunity. As Inspector General of the Army, his wife could, by military protocol, appear beside him in public with full honors, an honor she was denied in Vienna. This trip was as much about love and validation as it was about imperial duty. Who were the killers tasked with destroying this couple? They weren't seasoned operatives. They were a handful of teenage students and dropouts, consumed by nationalist fire and romantic notions of martyrdom. They called their local cell Mlada Bosna, Young Bosnia. Their local organizer was a 24-year-old schoolteacher named Danilo Ilic. He recruited 3 boys from Belgrade who had been trained by the Black Hand, Trifko Grabez, Nedeljko Kabranovic, the eventual bomber, and the group's quiet, intense leader, a 19-year-old named Gavrilo Princip. Princip was small for his age, sickly with the tuberculosis that would eventually kill him, but his eyes burned with a cold resolve. Born a poor peasant son, he had been expelled from school for protesting against Austrian rule and revered old assassins as heroes. He was the perfect weapon, a young man who believed his life was worthless, but his death could change the world. The Black Hand provided the tools. 4 FN Model 1910 semi-automatic pistols, delivered from a Serbian state arsenal. 6 hand grenades. And for each boy, a cyanide capsule, a final, grim instruction to ensure their silence. So the plot is set. The assassins are armed and waiting. But for this entire plan to work, it needs one final, unwitting accomplice. It needs a colossal failure of security. Enter General Oskar Podgorek, the military governor of Bosnia. Podgorek was a man defined by 2 things, rigid ambition and a deep-seated insecurity. He was obsessed with detail, planning everything for the Archduke's visit from the temperature of his wine to the construction of a private chapel. But on the most critical detail, security, he was disastrously negligent. He had received warnings of threats, but dismissed them. He viewed a heavy military presence as an insult to the city's honor, and his own. He wanted the visit to look smooth, effortless, a projection of calm imperial power. The local police force was a mere 120 officers to cover a route of 4 miles. To make matters worse, as a final act of hubris, the Archduke's entire motorcade route was published in the local newspaper days in advance, giving the assassins a perfect, printed schedule for their attack. And so we arrive at that sunny morning, June 28, 1914. The 6-car motorcade sets off from the train station. Franz Ferdinand and his wife Sophie are in the second car, an open-topped Graf and stiffed double phaeton. With them, sharing the car, is the man responsible for their safety, General Podgorek. Along the Appel Quay, the assassins take their positions. The first 2 lose their nerve as the car approaches. They do nothing. Then, at 10:10 a.m., near the Kumurija bridge, Nedeljko Kabranovic steps forward. He arms his grenade and throws it. But the driver sees it and accelerates. The bomb hits the folded-back roof of the car, bounces into the street, and explodes under the third car. Chaos erupts. Smoke, shrapnel, wounded officers. Kabranovic swallows his cyanide, but the poison is old and weak. He vomits, and jumps into the Miljacka River, which is only a few inches deep. He's dragged out, beaten by the crowd, and arrested. The first attempt is a complete, almost comical, failure. The Archduke is safe. So why didn't the motorcade just speed out of the city? Why did they continue the tour? The answer lies in a collision of 2 powerful personalities in that car, the Archduke's rigid sense of duty, and Podgorek's desperate need to save face. At the town hall, the mood is electric with tension. After publicly berating the mayor, Franz Ferdinand's anger cools, replaced by concern. He learns that officers from the 3rd car are in the hospital. He insists, against all advice, on visiting them. This is the critical moment. This is where history pivots. A member of his staff pleads with him to leave the city. But Governor Podgorek, humiliated by the security breach, sees a chance to redeem himself. He assures the Archduke that the danger has passed. When pressed about the wisdom of continuing, he makes a statement that will echo through history for its tragic arrogance. Do you think Sarajevo is full of assassins? He agrees to the hospital visit but proposes a change of route. To avoid the narrow, crowded streets of the city center, they will go straight down the wide-open Appel Quay. It's a sensible plan. There's just one problem. In the confusion and chaos at Town Hall, no one tells the drivers. The motorcade pulls away from the Town Hall. The first car in the procession, carrying the mayor and the police chief, reaches the intersection at the Latin Bridge. And it turns right, onto Franz Joseph Street, the original, published route. The Archduke's driver, a man named Leopold Lojka, is simply following his leader. He follows his training. He follows his habit. He makes the right turn. In the back, Podioreck explodes. What is this? This is the wrong way. We're supposed to take the Appel Quay. Lojka slams on the brakes. The Grafenstift, a heavy, 32-horsepower vehicle, shudders to a halt. Lojka fumbles with the gears, trying to reverse the big car in the narrow street. The engine coughs, hesitates, and stalls. For a few agonizing seconds, the car is a stationary target, frozen just feet from the curb. And standing on that curb, outside Moritz Schiller's delicatessen, having given up all hope for the day, is Gavrilo Princip. Chance had failed him once. Now, it had delivered the heir to an empire directly to his feet. Princip doesn't hesitate. He steps off the curb. He raises his FN 1910 pistol. It's a slim, modern, .380 caliber weapon, easily concealed but devastatingly effective at close range. He fires 2 shots. The first bullet strikes Sophie in the abdomen. She slumps over, her head falling into her husband's lap. The second bullet hits the Archduke in the neck, severing his jugular vein. At first, no one understands what has happened. Count Harak, riding on the car's running board, thinks they've been deafened by a backfire. Podioreck is still focused on the driver's error. Then he sees the blood. A thin stream is trickling from the Archduke's mouth. As his wife lies dying, Franz Ferdinand's last words are a plea, Saperl. Saperl. Don't die. Stay alive for our children. Count Harak asks him if he is in pain. The Archduke whispers, "It is nothing," 6 or 7 times, his voice fading with each word. By the time the car reaches the governor's residence minutes later, both the Archduke and his Duchess are dead. The 2 shots fired by a teenage boy on a Sarajevo street corner were the starting pistol for the 20th century. The diplomatic detonation was immediate and absolute. The components had been sitting in storage for years, just waiting for a spark. Vienna, goaded by a guilt-ridden and vengeful Podioreck, drafts an ultimatum to Serbia, a list of demands so harsh they were designed to be rejected. Berlin issues its infamous blank check, promising unconditional support for whatever Austria-Hungary decides to do. St. Petersburg, the great protector of the Slavs, begins rattling its mobilization papers. Paris stands by its alliance with Russia. London, the world's reluctant umpire, watches with growing dread. Alliances, designed to keep the peace, now function like a series of tripwires. Rail timetables, once symbols of progress, become mobilization schedules. Declarations of war replace frantic diplomatic telegrams. Within 5 weeks, the great powers of Europe are locked in a death struggle. And before it's over, 4 years later, more than 16 million people will be dead. For great empires, the Austro-Hungarian, the Ottoman, the German, and the Russian, will be nothing more than lines struck through in the history books. All because of a cascade of small, human failures on a single summer day. So, what is the pattern here? What does this autopsy of a disaster tell us? It wasn't fate. It was a system failure, a chain reaction of catastrophic choices. First, you have the security failure, a published route, a shockingly small police presence, and a governor more concerned with optics than with armor. Governor Podioreck's pride created the opportunity. Second, the communication failure, a critical change of plans, a direct order to avoid the city center, never reaches the one person who needed to hear it most, the driver. That single, missed message put the car on the wrong street. Third, the mechanical failure, a driver's conditioned reflex, a hard brake, a stalled engine. The heavy Grafenstift hesitates for just 10 seconds, but 10 seconds is an eternity when an assassin is 5 feet away. And finally, you have the human failure. A network of zealous teenagers, empowered by a shadowy state-sponsored terrorist group, meets a rigid, arrogant imperial system that cannot imagine its own vulnerability. The lesson of Sarajevo is not about grand strategy or inevitable historical forces. It's about the terrifying fragility of complex systems. It shows how pride can dismantle prudence, how a single point of failure can crack an entire continent, and how the smallest human habit, a driver making a familiar turn, can become the lever that moves the world. We live in a world of systems infinitely more complex and faster than in 1914. Our communications are instant, our weapons are smarter, our crises unfold in nanoseconds. But the human element, the pride, the ambiguity, the potential for one catastrophic error, remains the same. The echo of that wrong turn in Sarajevo is a warning: the powder is always laid. The most important question is whether we can see the brittle links in our own chain before the fuse is lit. Join us as we continue to investigate history's most critical turning points. Subscribe now for daily deep dives into the decisions that shaped our world. And to continue your investigation, click on the video on your screen now to see another story of how a small detail led to a massive disaster. Now, we leave you with a question. You are Governor Podgorek. The bomb has gone off. The crowd is watching. Your career, your honor, is on the line. Do you prioritize dignity or delay? Do you project calm or do you get the Archduke out of the city immediately? Let us know your verdict in the comments below.